The locksmith's pick was scratching at my front door, and I sat in the dark and let it. It was 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. The house was cold on purpose. I knew exactly who was standing on my porch because I knew their headlights, and I knew the sound of my brother laughing when he thinks he has already won. My parents were out there. So was Travis. What they carried in their hands that night was worse than a locksmith. I'm Charlotte, and I'm 36. This is the story of every Christmas they kept me out of the house, and the one Christmas they tried to break into mine. If you have ever been the empty chair at someone's table, this one is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. For 20 years, there was no room for me at their table. They never once imagined I would be the one deciding who got through the door, and they had no idea who was already inside, sitting in the dark, waiting with me. The first Christmas I remember counting chairs, I was 8. We had a long table with a scratched oak top, set every December like a magazine spread. That year, the table ran out before it reached me. I stood in the doorway in my church dress and waited for someone to notice the math. My mother noticed me noticing. She didn't get angry. That was the thing people never understood about her. She crouched down, smoothed my collar, and said, "We can only set so many places, honey." Then she handed me a plate and pointed me toward the kitchen. I told myself it was a one-time thing, but the shortage never went away. It took me 20 years to understand. The shortage was never about chairs. It was only ever about me. No one ever hit me or screamed at me. If they had, maybe I'd have understood it sooner. Cruelty announces itself. Absence just lets you wonder. On Christmas morning, the presents had tags in my mother's handwriting. Gary, Travis, Mom, and mine was never there. Mine came later, practical, apologized for. We didn't want to spoil you. In every family photo, I'm standing half out of frame. I learned to do for myself early. My own breakfast at 7, my own lunches, my own braids in the toaster's reflection. By 12, I could run a household nobody had asked me to run. I thought if I became useful enough, the table would make room. I never asked the real questions sitting under all of it. Why, in a family of 4, did the math only ever fail to include one person? There was one thing no one touched. A small silver frame on my mother's dresser, turned toward the wall. Inside was a photograph of a pale yellow hospital blanket, no baby visible. I asked about it once, at 10. My mother took it from my fingers so fast I never asked again. "That's not for little hands," she said. Every December she went quiet, not sad exactly, just elsewhere. She'd forget dinner, sit at the window with cold coffee. My father walked softer those days. I didn't have words for it, only the feeling that the shortage, the quiet, and the turned-away frame were all connected, and that I'd been born standing outside a door in my mother that I was never let through. I left the day after my 18th birthday, spring of 2007. I'd saved for it the way you save for a flight out of a war. Babysitting money, ice cream money, a winter of shoveling driveways. By 18, I had $1,100 in a sock and a battered Corolla bought for $400 of it. Nobody tried to stop me. My mother was at the sink. My father read his paper. Travis, 14 and already untouchable, didn't look up from the television. "Call when you get wherever you're going," my mother said. That was the whole goodbye. I drove 3 hours, cried once in a diner parking lot, then went in and made myself a promise over the worst coffee in Ohio. Someday I'd have a place of my own, with a door and a lock and my name on the deed, where no one could decide there wasn't room for me. I didn't know how, I just knew I would. If you've ever packed a bag like that, you know how this feels. Stay with me, comment, and subscribe. I started with a bucket, literally. A yellow bucket, a box of rags, dollar store supplies. My first client was a tired single mother who cried when she saw her kitchen. She told 2 friends. For a year, I slept in the Corolla behind a grocery store more nights than I want to admit, showered at a $9 a month gym, and split every dollar into 3 jars. Gas, supplies, someday house. I overdid everything because failure would have proven them right. By 25, I'd hired my first 2 employees. By 28, I had an office, a logo, a name, Booth Home Care. We didn't just clean. We watched people's homes when they traveled, managed move-outs, cared for the elderly's houses. I was building, out of nothing, the exact thing I'd never had. A place where everyone belonged. Growing up didn't fix it, though. The first Christmas after I left, I called home from a payphone and heard a party behind my mother's voice. A Christmas party I hadn't been told about. "We can only set so many places, honey. You understand." I was 19, 3 hours away, and I still said, "Of course." Meanwhile, Travis got everything I didn't. A catered 16th birthday, a rented hall for a barely earned graduation, a car when he wanted one, college money he never used. I told myself I didn't care. I cared. I built an entire life around proving I didn't need them, and every December I was 8 years old again, doing the math, coming up one short. Travis was 4 years younger and raised in a different family under the same roof. Where I learned to do for myself, he learned someone would always do for him. Every failure was covered, every shortfall absorbed, until my parents had mortgaged their own security bailing him out of a lawn business, a vending route, a consulting venture that was really just a website and a leased truck. My cousin Patty kept me updated. "Your folks bailed Travis out again. That boy could fall in a lake and come out with a fish in his pocket." I didn't know yet how large the debt underneath it all had grown. The last time I saw the whole family together was my grandmother's funeral. The one relative who used to slip me $10 and call me her second sunshine. Afterward, in the church basement, I did what I always did. Refilled coffee, cleared plates, made myself useful. Travis found me at the sink, half drunk on cheap funeral wine. "You don't have to keep showing up, right? Nobody expects you to. You're not really one of us, Charlotte." He said it kindly, which was the worst part. I dried my hands, set down the towel, and stopped waiting for a chair at their table. If I wasn't really one of them, their math could no longer break my heart. I'd build my own table and decide who sat at it. Booth Home Care grew slowly, then all at once. By 2025, I had 4 vans, 11 employees, contracts across half the nicer neighborhoods in the county. I understood the value of a home in a way my clients, who'd always had one, never quite did. My family had no idea any of this existed. We barely spoke. They still pictured the girl who left with a duffel bag, and because they never asked, they never saw what was coming. I found the house in September 2025 on a street called Maple Hollow, the biggest on the block, 3 stories of brick, a wraparound porch, a turret room, built in 1912, loved and then neglected. I knew its bones from 100 houses like it. Standing in the empty front hall, I could already see the long table by the windows. I bought it with money from the bucket and the truck and 15 years of refusing to fail. At closing, the document read, "Grantee, Charlotte Booth, sole owner." I had been a person nobody quite counted, and now a legal paper counted me as the only one. It took about 3 weeks for the news to travel, Patty to her sister, to my mother, and the temperature of my family changed overnight. My mother, who hadn't called on a non-holiday in years, called to say she'd been thinking of me. "I hear you bought a big old place. We'd love to come see it." 2 days later, Travis texted, no greeting, just questions. How many bedrooms, what I paid, and then, "Who's the house under? Just you?" I'd run a business 15 years. I knew when someone was sizing up an asset. I called my real estate attorney, Ruth Calloway, and asked, point blank, whether someone could take a house out from under you. "More than you'd think," she said. "One of the fastest growing crimes in the country. Deed fraud. Someone forges your signature on a quitclaim deed, a form transferring property, and files it with the county recorder, who doesn't verify signatures, only records what's handed across the counter. The terrifying part," Ruth said, "is who does it. Roughly 9 out of 10 times, it's family." Ruth told me about a free county service, a property fraud alert. Register your name and parcel, and the instant anything is recorded against your house, you're notified first. I enrolled that afternoon, printed the confirmation beside my recorded deed, and laid the 2 pages on my kitchen table. I told no one. I kept my voice warm and vague with my mother. Let them think I was still the girl with the duffel bag. The quiet feeling said, "Don't show them your hand." The number came through Patty in late October. Travis had personally guaranteed a $90,000 business loan on a venture that had collapsed, The lender wasn't family, and he and Megan were behind on rent with an eviction starting. My parents had finally hit their limit. 30 years of bailouts had left nothing. I did the math. $90,000 in debt. A man raised to believe the world owed him a soft landing. A sister with a paid-off mansion he'd just learned existed. A mother suddenly warmly interested in seeing it. The pieces didn't arrange into anything good. In November, my mother invited me home for Christmas for the first time in nearly 20 years. "There's always been a place for you, Charlotte." I'd waited my whole childhood for that sentence, and now that it had come, I knew it was a lie. Then Travis texted, casually, about keeping important papers safe. Deed, title, where did I keep them? He wasn't asking how I was. He was asking where the deed was. I started screenshotting everything, dated and saved. Megan called next, breezy, asking whether the county actually checks who signs a quitclaim deed or just files it. That is not a tax question. Travis had the entitlement, Megan had the plan. My mother called again in December and said, of my house, "It's just so much house for one person, it really ought to be for the whole family. You know how it is. We can only set so many places." The sentence that had always meant, "There's no room for you," now meant, "You're the one too many." They weren't asking to visit. They were planning to take it. I called Ruth, wanting to confront them outright. She talked me down. "If you warn them now, they back off and you've got nothing. Forgery isn't real until the document exists and they try to use it. You don't stop a trap by warning the animal. You stop it by being ready when it springs." So I let them think they were winning and got ready. Once I stopped pushing back, Travis's texts turned sharper. That kind of house should belong to someone who actually takes care of family, not someone who ran off. Then, "Mom and Dad are getting old. That house could keep this whole family afloat." I screenshotted every one, letting him build, in his own words, a complete record of motive. The alert came on Wednesday, December 3rd, at 4:47 p.m. Property fraud alert. A new document recorded against your monitored property. Quitclaim deed. Grantor, Charlotte Booth. Grantee, Travis Booth. I had signed nothing. Someone had forged my name and walked it across the recorder's counter, and the county had stamped and filed it without checking, exactly as Ruth had warned. 20 years of being counted out of the family's math, and now a single page had counted me out of my own house. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. I drove to the recorder's office, paid for a certified copy, and read the forged signature line by line, close enough to fool a stranger, wrong enough to tell me instantly it wasn't mine. A notary I'd never met had certified I'd appeared in person. I photographed every page, noted the recording number, and walked into the police station to file a report with Detective Ray Foster. I laid it all out in order. The forged deed, the notary, Travis's texts, Megan's question about signatures, my mother's sudden warmth, the $90,000 in debt. "Ma'am," Foster said, "I've rarely seen a victim walk in this organized." "I run a business," I said. "I keep records." Forgery and filing a false instrument were felonies, he told me, but strongest if they acted on it. Possession was the part a jury understood. "You said your mother's been pushing you to come home for Christmas?" He didn't need to finish the thought. I also called a local reporter, Dana Whitfield, who'd spent the fall writing about deed fraud. Her line had stuck with me, that the cruelest version of the crime was the most common, because it's almost always someone you'd let in the front door. I told her everything over coffee. "Somebody who couldn't fit me at the table," I said, "until I had something they wanted." She agreed to be there if it came to a head. Foster and I met once more in late December to plan it through. Travis's deed was worthless to him until he could show possession, locks changed, looking like the rightful owner, ideally in a house they believed was empty, and they'd believe that on Christmas Eve. Because for 20 years, the family story had been that Charlotte spent the holidays alone. I declined my mother's invitation gently. "I think I'll just have a quiet one at home this year," and heard her satisfaction through the phone. She thought she'd confirmed I'd be home, alone, easy prey. She'd actually confirmed the date. On Christmas Eve, I parked 3 streets over and walked back in the dark. Every window black, house unlit, but not empty. Foster and 2 officers waited out of sight of the front windows. Dana was tucked into the turret with her camera on the hall below. I sat in the dark front parlor in my good coat with a folder on my lap. The recorded deed, the fraud alert confirmation, the same 2 pages from my kitchen table, about to become evidence. I heard the car on the gravel before I saw the lights. Travis's voice, too confident, covering nerves. "Told you, place is dead." The locksmith, bored and businesslike. Megan, sharp, telling everyone to hurry. My mother, quieter. "Are we sure about this, Travis?" And Travis, "Mom, the house is ours now, it's all legal." Then the scratch of metal in my lock, the sound that opened this whole story. The deadbolt gave with a soft click, and my family walked into my house uninvited for the first time in their lives. Megan came first with a flashlight, already planning which locks to change by morning. Travis followed, entitlement roaring back the second he crossed the threshold, waving the forged deed like a flag. All this for her, and now it's ours. My parents came in last, my mother's hand on my father's arm. "It's so big," she murmured, almost afraid of it. Then Travis turned in a slow circle and laughed. She never belonged in a place like this anyway. She never belonged anywhere. That was the moment. I reached over and turned on the lamp. The room flooded with light. My family froze, blinking, caught mid-step. Detective Foster stepped forward, unhurried, badge in hand, 2 uniformed officers behind him. And up in the turret, Dana's shutter was already clicking. I rose from my armchair with the folder in my hand and looked at my brother across the front hall of the house I'd built. "What is this?" he said, panic breaking through. "Merry Christmas," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You can put the deed down, Travis." He exploded. "This is my house. It's legal. You set us up." While Megan went white and silent, and my father simply stared at me with something in his face I'd never seen there before. Foster laid it out steadily. The recorded deed, the fraud alert, Travis's own texts explaining why he believed the house should be his, the locksmith already cooperating. "Travis Booth, you're under arrest for forgery and filing a fraudulent instrument." The cuffs came out. The brother who'd told me in a church basement I wasn't really one of them was arrested in my front hall while a reporter photographed his face. Megan was detained beside him, already asking for a lawyer. My mother turned to me crying. "Charlotte, please. We can fix this. We're family." I looked at her a long moment. "There were always enough places, Mom," I said quietly. "You just never set one for me. So tonight, I set the table myself, and I set it for the police." Red and blue light washed across the ceilings of the house I'd built from a bucket and a truck. For the first time in 36 years, the woman who decided who belonged had nothing left to say. My father didn't run or argue. As Travis was walked to the car, still shouting, my father lowered himself onto my bottom stair, looking every one of his 67 years, and put his face in his hands. "I always knew it was wrong," he said. "The chairs, all of it. I knew it every Christmas and never said a thing." I didn't forgive him on the spot. That's earned, not handed over on a staircase. But I saw him fully for the first time. A weak man who'd chosen his wife's grief over his daughter for 40 years. "Why was it always me?" I asked. He told me about a first baby, a girl, lost before I was born, and how my mother never climbed out of that hole, and how having me so soon after had felt to her like the world trying to replace what couldn't be replaced. The yellow blanket in the silver frame, the quiet every December. It explained the whole twisted math of my childhood, and none of it made the math right. "She grieved a daughter," I said, "by erasing the one she had." Travis and Megan were charged with felony forgery and filing a fraudulent instrument. The evidence was overwhelming. The case never went to trial. Megan took a deal and testified Travis had pressed the forged signature himself. He took his own deal rather than face a jury looking at photos of him in cuffs in my hallway. Both are felons now. The $90,000 he tried to solve by stealing my house is still $90,000, sitting now on top of a criminal record. Ruth filed a notice of fraudulent deed, and a judge voided it within weeks. The house was mine again on paper, the way it had always been mine in fact. Dana's story ran the week after New Year's, using only my first name but telling the truth. The person most likely to steal your home is the one you'd let in for Christmas dinner. 3 readers wrote in afterward to say it made them check their own county's fraud alert. My mother was never charged. There wasn't enough tying her hands directly to the forgery, only to the warmth she'd used to try to empty my house. But everyone in town read the paper, and the woman who'd spent a lifetime curating how the family looked got to watch the outside learn exactly what she was. She and I don't speak. My father writes real letters now, in his shaky hand. I read them. I haven't written back yet. I haven't thrown them away either. I changed every lock myself the next morning and re-enrolled in the fraud alert before I'd even had coffee. Then I hung one stocking by the fireplace, with one name on it. Mine. The next Christmas, I set the long table by the windows I'd pictured the day I first walked through the empty house, and filled it with the people who'd actually shown up for me. Employees turned friends. Patty, loyal under all the gossip. A few neighbors, 12 places, everyone full, everyone set on purpose. For 20 years, I believed belonging was something my family could grant or withhold, like a chair they chose not to bring out. It never was. It was a table I finally set for myself. A locksmith on my porch, a forged name on a deed, a room full of red and blue light. If you've ever been the empty chair at someone else's table, set your own this year and lock your own door. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and subscribe.